What's going on, everybody? It's that time again. The AllSooners Podcast, episode 177 on this Thursday, March 9th, 2023. Josh Callaway in Oklahoma City, Ryan Chapman and more, John Hoover in Tulsa. Gentlemen, how are we doing?
Oh, man. I wanted to start with men's basketball and just say rest in peace.
Thank God it's over.
Read the obit at AllSooners. Yeah, it's kind of a reset point. I was listening to Tanner Grove's press conference and him talking about gratitude and, his expectations, and he's met friends, lifelong relationships and all that stuff. And I felt bad for him. They deserve better than that, but they just can't find the bucket. They can't win games. So here we are the night after the presumably the season is over, right? They lost to Oklahoma State in the Big 12 tournament last night. And I feel bad for those guys. I do. They deserve better.
Yeah, I mean, you feel bad when the conversation we have is, well, they haven't quit. They're still trying. They're just the 10th best team in a 10-team conference. So we'll get to that later. We promise. A lot of football first, then we'll do the basketball.
Yep. Yeah, no kidding. Nothing personal, obviously, toward any of those guys, but we'll have to lay it out there. It was a year. It was definitely a year for that program and that team. We'll figure out where they go next. Like Ryan said, a little bit later. We do have some football to talk about, of course, as always, in these here parts. Before we get there, I think the big talk this week certainly revolves around the Board of Regents meeting that was held, whatever day that was, Tuesday, I think it was. This week's been a blur.
Mm-hmm.
Who was there in attendance? A lot of things to take away from that and this week with, facility renovations, coaching extensions, things like that. So we'll pull it apart. We'll talk about what stands out to us from this week there at Oklahoma. Let's do the facility part of it first. I think we can kind of tie it into the basketball conversation a little bit. I'll read off the things that were approved by the Board of Regents this week, and then you guys can jump in, whatever jumped out to you pretty much. $175 million in football operations facilities, $75 million in student-athlete success centers. That obviously goes to all sports. $9 million in the LNC renovations toward the locker room. $45 million for baseball improvements and expansion. $48 million rounding up for softball improvements and expansion. So OU's throwing some money around here, which is obviously you need to do. SEC coming up, well-established. Oklahoma needs to improve in a lot of areas, in all sports really, before that move happens, or at least in the early stages of that move. What jumped out to you when you guys saw these numbers? What was the eye catcher?
Yeah, golf's getting a little bit of money thrown their way. Tennis is getting a little bit more money. Gymnastics is getting a little bit more money. So everybody across the board is getting a little bit. So, or at least a little bit. Football's getting a lot, obviously. What stood out to me was I had, I was in on the conversation with Joe Castiglione for a little over 10 minutes, almost 15 minutes. And you know what, guys? Not one time did he ask me for my advice on what to do with the basketball arena. Now, I just was like, Joe, I'm right here for you. Just let me know what you need, and I'll give it to you. I got some suggestions. I don't know how good they are. I don't know how feasible they are. But they're going to throw $9.5 million at Lloyd Noble. Not the seating area, not the concessions area, not anywhere, but just where the team hangs out. So why do you do that? You do that because you need better recruits. You need to show that area, that new area with new fancy technology and lights and all this. You need to show that to your recruits so you can get better players, so you can win games, so you can get fans, right? Okay, so that makes sense. But if he had asked me, if he had said, Hoove, come here, I want to ask you something. What do you think we should do with basketball? You know what I would tell him? And I know this is kind of off the beaten path. This is kind of out there from left field a little bit. But I just love the location of McCaslin Fieldhouse. Hire that firm, that Gary Sparks' firm that raised the roof at Gallagher-Iba, and raise the roof, increase your seating, put in some amenities at McCaslin. Last I looked, it's a beautiful building. It's a perfect location. Seats about 5,000 right now, so you could get that up to 6,500, 7,500, whatever you want to do, maybe 8,000 if you want to push that.
Yeah.
Add some concessions, add some facilities, add some restrooms. It's going to be a little bit of a build. I know that's not a popular idea. That's my favorite. What would I do realistically? What's probably most feasible? How about get a backhoe in Lloyd Noble and lower the ground, lower the playing surface, lower the floor by about 10 feet, and get the fans that are so far away from the arena, from the floor, get them down, get them closer to the floor, increase the atmosphere, charge that place up, turn that upper concourse into a loge boxes or suites, something like that. Bring some money in that place, maybe get some corporate donors. I don't know. But instead, what they're going to do, it sounds like they're pushing for that University Park North. Is that what it's called? North Park, University Park North. Yeah. They're going to do that. That's up by Robinson and Tecumseh, up in that area of town. It's like 5-6 miles from campus. I don't see student engagement landing at the new facility if they team with the city of Norman and Cleveland County to build it north of town. I just don't see it.
To be great for me, it cuts my commute to the Lloyd Noble Center in half. So let's make that happen. I think they should actually play in a park until Porter Moser recruits a big. That's the punishment. You don't get the Lloyd Noble Center. You don't get McCaslin. You just have to play outside in a park. And whoever rolls up, that's who gets to watch.
The double rim and the chain net.
Yes, that's what that team deserves right now. McCaslin would be fun. It'd be really cool. I think you saw with the Moody Center, there are different numbers out there based on attendance for concerts versus basketball, things like that. But Texas, when they moved from the Irwin Center to the Moody Center, they went from about 16,500, 16,500, down to about 10. Again, that's sifting through media guides. I hope that's correct. This is the trend in college basketball right now. Baylor, the brand new facility they're about to open, is going to be smaller capacity. Why? Smaller capacity, but so you can fill it. It's loud, and make sure everyone has great seats right on top of the action, especially in the state of Oklahoma. Like, everyone wants to yell at the clouds about Oklahoma attendance. Guess what? OSU, it's not as bad, but like Oklahoma State has also struggled with attendance since this little team called the Thunder came to town, because OU basketball tickets, like my mom and dad still live in Norman, and they go through this conversation every OU home game. Do we want to pay X amount to go watch OU probably lose to Kansas, and sit in crappy seats high in the Lloyd Noble Center? Or do we want to get on StubHub right now and for $15 a pop, go watch the Thunder play? And I can see professional basketball players Josh Giddey, that's a ton of fun, stuff like that. That's the conversation a lot of people are having. So you need to bring the capacity down, get the fans right on top of it so you can create that rowdy atmosphere. Because even when that Alabama game, which was as loud as I've heard the Lloyd Noble Center in a long time, it would have been even better if the students that did show up were like right on top of the action instead of just spread out, things like that. I think that would be much better. So that'll be interesting to see how that goes. There's also, when you say, why are you putting money into the Lloyd Noble Center if you're looking for other options? Well, remember the Griffin Performance Center's right there. The men's and women's practice facilities are tacked on. So I think that's why you keep seeing money being put into not the actual, like the Lloyd Noble Center arena that fans see, but kind of up the tunnel and down back there. Because whether you move to McCaslin, get an arena, whatever, I doubt that suddenly you're going to want to abandon those practice facilities. I mean, they spent a ton of money on the Griffin Performance Center. So interesting to kind of see that. I think everyone's just really excited to see what the new football facility is going to look like, the 2 practice fields, stuff like that. It's going to be a really big undertaking, and something that Brent Venables and Tad Thurnipseed immediately came in and said, we've got some other eyes. Thad's been at Alabama and Clemson. Brent's been at Clemson. We need this to compete if you're going to recruit against the SEC. And Brent Venables successfully recruited against the SEC as an ACC school at Clemson.
Will they still practice at the rugby fields? That's the question. Whenever you get the new practice fields in there, because Brent Venables seemed to be pretty partial to the rugby fields. What did he say last year? It's hot and it's far away. Basically, he was just like, it sucks out there.
The ground was harder than
the. Don't want to get these guys getting too soft. I imagine they'll still go out to the rugby fields. Yeah, as far as, I mean, we all know Lloyd Noble Center, it is a dump. I mean, it's dated. You know, it's not. That's no new ground being covered there. I do think the McCaslin Fieldhouse thing is interesting. I've never been there. I've only ever seen pictures, but they have played there before. I've been to McCaslin Fieldhouse, but not for a basketball game, I should say. I've only seen pictures, though. They have played there before. I can distinctly think of like one photo of Buddy Hield doing a layup at McCaslin. I don't know if that was an exhibition game or what that was. but it looked cool. It did look cool. So maybe that could work if you add some seating, and it is a great location. It's literally, if you've never been to campus or anything, it's like 20 steps from the football stadium. It's right there. So that would be cool. I don't think that the University North Park thing is a horrible idea, though, either. And I do agree with Hoob that the student part of it probably wouldn't be great out there because it is far. It's like probably at least 10 or 15-minute drive to get to that other side of town from campus. Right. But it would help you a lot. To Ryan's kind of, he made a joke, but it was a point of all the people come from OKC. It's like basically in OKC almost at that point, or it's like almost in Moore, essentially. Like it's much more centrally located for like the metro. It's much easier to get to. And if it's bigger and nicer, that's a very nice area. There's lots of restaurants and stuff over there. So I think, because Lloyd Noble Center's by nothing. It's kind of just by nothing.
Out in the middle of nowhere.
It's middle of nowhere. So I do think that there will be some benefits there if you're kind of willing to sacrifice, like, okay, students, the student section is it is what it is. We'll live with it if we can get, a better arena, better area kind of a thing. So there's lots of options. But at the end of the day, Lloyd Noble Center, OU needs a new arena at a certain point. OU fans will go if the product is good. The product's not any good right now. When the product is good, people go to Lloyd Noble. But it still doesn't mean that they shouldn't have a better arena at the end of the day and try to get better players in there and all that. At a certain point, you just need new facilities. And that's what that team needs right now.
Well,
and go ahead, Brian.
I think the student thing's a little overrated because when basketball plays, it's cold outside, right? That's just the time of year. It's not like it's, hey, you go 2 steps over from your dorm room and you're there. And once you're a freshman, you're not really living on campus anymore for the most part. And so if that's the issue, OU, Porter Moser, he's shown the student engagement, they can bus people from fraternity and sorority row over to the arena and back if that becomes a big issue. Everyone on campus, just about a ton of people have cars. Like, it's a very car-friendly campus environment. It's not like this is Georgia Tech in downtown Atlanta where you're on this little spot of land in Norman and no one has a car. You don't leave the parking garage ever, anything like that. Like, I think that's a little overblown. And like you said, Josh, if they win and they're fun, I think people will go regardless.
People will get there. Yeah.
Yeah, and I'll add to this. Parking on campus, especially around the football stadium, is not the easiest thing. Driving through Norman to get to that side of campus, if you're coming from Oklahoma City, if you're coming from I-35, not the easiest thing. So I fully acknowledge that. It's going to be tough to draw the grown-up crowd, the boosters, the ticket buyers, things like that to get in your stadium. But having it on campus, what Joe said was interesting when I asked him the question about student engagement and trying to you're moving it from 1.1 to 1.3 miles from the football stadium, right? You're moving it from Lloyd Noble to 5 miles north of the stadium, which is, as Josh said, 15, 16 minutes in decent traffic to get across town. He said 85%, they took a survey, 85% of the students who go to the games drive their cars. Well, yeah, of course they do, because the parking lot, the stadium is way out in the middle of nowhere, and the parking lot's wide open. It's easy to get to. It's easy to drive down, Jenkins and get to where you need to go. Driving across town and expecting those 85% of the people to take their cars and park it way out at some, shopping and entertainment and bar district where they're probably going to have to pay for parking, because the city of Norman's going to have its hand out when this thing gets open and gets running. The county's going to have its hand out. People are going to have to pay. You've lost the students. And guys, I looked it up. Cameron Indoor Stadium, Duke University, has a capacity of 9,300. I mean, we think about that place as one of the cathedrals, right? And we look at Fog Allen, which has a capacity over 18,000. It's one of the cathedrals of college basketball, but we've been in it. It's been renovated 100 times. It's musty. It's dank up in the corners. We all know this because that's where we sit when we go there. It's one of the places, Cameron, Fog. It's one of those places that's a destination to go to. Lloyd Noble is the opposite of that. People are trying their best to stay out of Lloyd Noble. So I just think it's time. I think it's time to start rethinking basketball at OU.
And the last point, we center this conversation around the men's basketball program, things like that. Ginny Broadcheck, the women, those tip times are usually an hour earlier. 6 p.m. is a really common tip time. And I know that Ginny Broadcheck markets that program to families. The student conversation is a negative of moving it a little bit north. The family metro conversation for the women, an actual fun product that is winning basketball games right now. I think that we might be talking about two different crowds, because I think the women would benefit greatly from moving that thing a little bit closer to the metro area, just because it's easier to get to for anyone not in South Norman, and earlier tip times, all that stuff. That little commute stuff matters a whole lot.
Sure.
And I'll just add this too. I don't think you're going to be, if you put it on I-35, make it easy to get to right off the highway, you're not going to be drawing a big, huge crowd from Oklahoma City or, Moore or the metro area. You're just not. I mean, like you said, Ryan, at the beginning, there's Thunder dollars. There's so many other options right now. There's your 65, 75-inch TV sitting on your wall. Everybody's got ESPN Plus now, right? So it's just like, you're putting it up there, hoping you're going to build it and hoping they will come. I don't know that, OU basketball has ever been in a situation, even when they're going to Final Fours, it's tough to fill that place.
Yeah, no, that's a good point by Ryan. I mean, if it's a 6 o'clock tip on a midweek and you work a 9 to 5, you cannot get there by tip. It's just not going to happen. Whenever they have 6 o'clock tips, I leave from my house in OKC at like 4 because I know it's going to take an hour to get there. So that is a good point. And there are pros and cons to a lot of things. Like I said earlier, at the end of the day, if the product is good, people will find a way to get there. And the product's not good right now for the men. We'll see what they can do. We'll talk about their going out in a blaze of glory last night a little bit later. They went out with a thud, and we'll talk about that a little bit later on in the show. Doing also, just to tie up the Board of Regents thing too, those softball and baseball numbers are nice. High 40 millions. Obviously, softball got the new stadium coming, so you add on to that. Is nice to see, obviously, and then baseball too. Just that's a high number for baseball. Shout out to them. Obviously, baseball guy myself.
There's a couple of things about those dollar figures, Josh, that I wanted to just brush on real quick. The 47 million, 48 million, whatever it is, I think it might be up to 49. I think I saw earlier this week for Love's Field. They're well past the halfway point of that. They've secured the funding for that. Money's coming in. They're building it. Everything's going to be fine. So that's not really like this. That kind of surprised me that was included in the agenda on the Regents meeting. Like we're going to try and approve this, the spending on this money. That's already been done. And it's been out there for a long time. Baseball is in a fundraising situation right now. They're in a different deal where they've identified what they want to spend, but they haven't identified where the money's going to come from. They're getting $3 million here and $1 million there, and 500,000 here and there. A little bit different situation. So just wanted to throw that out there as well.
A clarification point, and forgive me, we've consumed so much, and this week's been a blur. But when Joe Ciglione went on with Toby Rowland on KREF and did his kind of 30 to 45 minute where he joined Toby, one thing that he talked about as well is that like you could add nothing to the plan. And over the last year, because of just economic stuff going on, interest rates are as high as ever, things like that. The cost to just build things has gone up a lot. And so how much, like on the Love's Field front, you mentioned it's already been approved. Ground's being broken. If you drive by there, you can see a big hole in the ground where they're starting to build the foundations and stuff. How much of that's kind of this is the new total for the same project because costs are just higher than they were 2 years ago, things like that. I think that was part of it a little bit as well.
I actually asked Joe that question, Ryan. I asked him specifically, what challenges do you face? What hurdles that weren't here that you didn't face just 2 to 5 years ago in this inflationary market, in this inflationary economy? And he kind of took that question and steered it toward NIL and what student athletes are looking for, and how he said competition is one of the big challenges that they have right now. Competition for those donation dollars, because there are people right now who are donating to the facilities, and there are people who have traditionally donated to the facilities who are now saying, I want to donate to these student athletes. I want to donate to an NIL package or something like that. So that money that OU previously used and there was a lot of donations over the past 20 years. Previously used for building facilities is now going straight into the athlete's pocket. OU has to come up with other creative ways to get that money secured.
Yeah, absolutely. So we'll see how that all shakes out, but certainly some notable numbers there from the Board of Regents on the facility renovation side of it, tying back into football, the football coaching side of it. Lots of raises and extensions and things like that approved. There's a lot to comb through here. So rather than read them all off, I guess I would just turn it over to you guys, and who obviously you were there. But in terms of what stuck out here on the coaching side of things, Jeff Lebby getting a nice little pay bump. They all did pretty much. Essentially, everybody kind of got a little extensions and stuff like that. Assistant coach salary pool went up, things like that. What jumped out on that side of things as Oklahoma, finalized their staff? Emmett Jones got his contract finalized, stuff like that. He got a raise, as you might guess, from what he was making at Texas Tech. What stuck out, I guess, on that side of things?
Yeah, so Emmett Jones is up to, $565 million? $565 million. Holy cow. What a land. What a deal he landed.
Contract.
I wonder what the recruiting returns on a wide receiver coach making $560 million on.
They could have built a new stadium for that. 285 base salary, 265 including his personal services. So whatever that is, 500
I thought it was like 550 or something. 560, yeah.
Yeah. 1,000, not million, 1,000. And he got a contract through 2025, January of 2025, so the 24 season. Only two guys got raises. I thought this was interesting. First of all, you say, wait a minute, OU coaching staff got raises? Kind of. DeMarco Murray, his base salary stays at $400, right? He didn't get a raise, but they almost doubled his outside income from unrestricted private sources, right? Fundraising, promotional PR, all that stuff. So his personal services part of his contract went up from $115 to $215. So he's now making $615,000 a year. DeMarco Murray is. He was underpaid to begin with. He's done some unbelievable things on the recruiting trail. So he's earned that money. He's earned a raise because of his ability to recruit. The other one that got a raise was interesting to me. I didn't realize his personal services were so low, first of all, and I didn't realize he had done such a great job in recruiting. I mean, clearly he has. He's brought in some guys, but I think all of them have to a large degree, especially guys like Jay Valai and Jeff Lebby. But it's Brandon Hall. Brandon Hall saw his personal services part of his contract. Base stays the same, of course, but his base is $300. His personal services go from $15,000 a year, which is, to me, was shockingly low, to now $65,000. So he got a little bit of a raise to $50,000. In this deal, nobody else got raises. Now, Lebby got an increase that was already written into his contract last year, so he's up $100,000 up to 1.9. And then Ted Roof also had a $50,000 written into his contract last year when he signed, automatic bump, and he'll get another one next year if he's still here. But in terms of raises, nobody got a raise. Two guys got new personal services extensions or additions. Joe John Finley got $165,000 of his contract reclassified to something else. So they just took money out of one pot and put it in another. No big deal there. But everybody else, all they got was extensions, and a couple of guys got through January 26. The rest of them through January 25. So I will say this. This is the time of year, fellas, where we examine what Bob Stoops' team did. We examine what Lincoln Riley's team did. And then the raises come out in March, and we assess, and we say, did they deserve a raise? What did they do? They only went 8-5 this year. Why would they give them raises? Every year those guys got raises. 6 and 7, no raises. I think that makes sense.
No, absolutely. No one on that staff was deserving of a raise last year. It was, much like when basketball this year, we keep having to bring up the 1964-65 season as first time since this or that. Everybody take a drink. If you heard 1998 mentioned it, you know what I mean? That was the measuring stick for Oklahoma football last season. That is not the measuring stick for anyone to get any raises. And especially with the money being sunk into the football facility and all that stuff. That's the program's raise this year. You got that big recruiting piece, that crown jewel, that whatever you want to call it. Until you win games on the field, no one's getting those raises unless, like you said, Hoove, it was stuff that was already scheduled in your contract, the bumps that get put up there. So it makes a ton of sense, and I think it all folds into why, at least for me, I don't know how you guys feel, like there's a big pressure for Oklahoma to win more games and show that development on the field this year. Not oh my gosh, they're a 6-7 football team, why are you suddenly picking them to do? No, it's not that. It's because you took 3 of their losses off because of scheduling, and you added 3 group of 5 opponents, right? Like Cincinnati, BYU, UCF, those are group of 5 rosters. They will be group of 5 rosters for 2 or 3 more seasons until they can kind of recruit in the Big 12, all that stuff. There's no excuse, none, regardless of all the portal guys, they're 100% staff evaluations, everything of that. Everyone who stayed didn't get processed out. That is why there's so much pressure on this team to get to maybe 9-10 wins, because the schedule is so soft on paper.
Yeah, no, Ryan, I agree. Not that, it's to say that, another season that's not what they want, they're going to just clean house or anything. But it is a little bit of a message to everybody. Kind of, last year wasn't what we wanted and needs to turn around. So I agree with kind of that notion. It puts a little more pressure on them. We talk about that a lot. The schedule is friendly and they should be set up to be better. And I don't think anybody's going into next year thinking Oklahoma needs to run the table or anything, but 9-10 wins needs to be the expectation, at least, right, going into next year. Who, you talked to Joe C there for a while, and people can watch on AllSooners.com. Anything else that stuck out from what Joe C had to say? I know you guys were able to talk to him for a little while.
Yeah.
Well, what else did he have that was of note before we move on to some other stuff?
It was good. I recommend watching the video, AllSooners. Just check out the watch video with Joe Castiglione. He revealed a lot. My question specifically was about the football operations building facility. We've gotten a little bit of nebulous information in terms of what exactly it's going to be. Athletic training, nutrition, support. Okay. They've kind of already got some of the best in the country at a lot of that, right? They're going to do some practice. They're going to build some practice stuff there. They're going to build full-size practice facilities. It's going to be something that other athletes can use, but it's going to be football-centric. One of the big things, one of the reasons they need this space is because when Lincoln Riley left and when Brent Venables came in, Brent said, one of the things I need, guys, is a support staff, a legit, big-time, not just Power 5 support staff. I need a support staff that's going to help us compete for national championships. Yeah. So they hired a bunch of dudes. They hired a bunch of people in this support staff, a bunch of former players. There's how many dozen former players now? Is it up to almost 30 former players who are now working in the facility, and whether it's the Soul Mission or strength and conditioning, fitness, training, nutrition, whatever. The support staff has gotten like quadrupled in size. And so where are you putting where are you putting all these people, right? That's one of the reasons that they had to build this. It's student athlete centered, of course, but they've got more office space now in there for the 40, 45, however many, whatever the number is, a support staff assistants that Brent Venables has hired. So the number of offices in the Switzer Center was fine for Bob Stoops, which is what they built it for. It was fine for Lincoln Riley because he didn't get to really bring on too many guys. Brent Venables quadruples his support staff. It's not fine for Brent Venables, so they have to move him over there and have comfortable space for all those coaches and all those analysts and all those GAs and all those assistants. And so that's a big part of it.
This is just what you get when you have fresh eyes on the program for the first time in a long time, right? Because 99, Bob Stoops comes in. Oklahoma's just a machine. He hands over to Lincoln Riley. Well, guess what? Lincoln Riley had been at Texas Tech in East Carolina. Lincoln Riley had not seen what Alabama's doing, what Georgia's doing, how SEC programs run, right? And so you had that going. Brent Venables has, again, recruited against the SEC at the ACC. He's been to a different spot. Clemson does things differently than Oklahoma. Doesn't make either one right, wrong, or the other. It's just Clemson had a more modern injection because they had to catch up at a later time than when Bob Stoops came in 99, right? That's just time, all that stuff. And so I think you're seeing that it's a realization of, oh crap, we're a little behind and heading to the SEC. We need to get the wheels moving just based off where things are going. Because I mean, you guys remember last year ahead of the season, Georgia wins the national championship and then announced a new $80 million facility for Kirby Smart and all those guys. So it's just, that's life in college sports. It's still a facilities arms race, whether it's putting money into the actual stadium, whether it's putting money into facilities that fans don't see that help with recruiting. That's what it takes to continue to, that's what it takes to continue to grind at the top. And that's why having your payout that will eventually be doubled by the SEC based off it here in a couple of years, based off what the Big 12 is getting right now, that all helps. That all helps.
Yeah, keep in mind, too, what you said is right. Brent Venables was defensive coordinator of an amazing defense on 2 national championship teams at Clemson that won the title in the middle of this Alabama dynasty, right? In the middle of this SEC dynasty. It was Clemson who rose up twice and won the national title and played for 2 others, I think. So getting those fresh eyes, like you said, on the program, a perspective from here's how it's done. Here's how you win national titles. Joe Castiglione and the people who donate the money to the university are having to reassess and say, wait a minute, what we have here is awesome. We need more. We need bigger. We need better.
100%. It makes sense. So we'll see if Oklahoma can get there in the near future. But they seem to be going in the right direction. But we'll see how it continues to go in the years ahead in the Venables tenure. All right, we'll take a break here. We'll come back. Let's talk about the Oklahoma receivers room a little bit, kind of pull that apart. Who are going to be the guys who are going to step up? Also, DJ Graham, what is he? We're going to talk about that a little bit more as well. Also, wrap up the NFL Scouting Combine in Indy. Some guys made some money. We'll talk about that next as well. Coming up here on the AllSooners Podcast. On Twitter, you can follow AllSooners at @all_Sooners. Ryan's at _Ryan Chapman. Who's at John E. Hoover. I'm at Josh M. Callaway. Our website is allsooners.com. We are a Fan Nation affiliate, part of the Sports Illustrated Network. All right, segment 2. Last week, Emmett Jones, who we just talked about, new wide receivers coach for the Oklahoma Sooners, comes over from Texas Tech. He tweeted this: high school coaches always walk the halls or hang out in the gym to find potential players. Look what the football god placed in my room. And it's the clip of DJ Graham and that insane interception he had against Nebraska in 2021. Now, obviously, we've talked about DJ Graham making the move from cornerback to wide receiver, but we haven't really, talked about, is he going to be any good at wide receiver next year? Like, how much of an impact is this guy actually going to have? Dylan Gabriel also shouted him out on Twitter as well. So it seems like there's a little bit of a hype train going for him, at least somewhat going into next year. We know he can catch. We were all at that Nebraska game. We know he can catch. What do you guys make of DJ Graham as wide receiver option here coming up? And what do you, hope to see from him in the spring? Obviously coming up here in a couple weeks. He's kind of one of the bigger enigmas on the team, I think, kind of going into next year a little bit.
Yeah, he's a talented receiver. He's got good hands. He was, as a prospect, 4-star wide receiver, right? Two-way guy. Lincoln Riley wanted him to play wide receiver. Alex Grinch said, please, let me have him for defense, and Grinch won. Ultimately, he's back at receiver. He'll be worth watching this spring, but I'm really hesitant right now to, pencil him in and say top 2 on the depth chart at the X or the Z or something like that. He's got a long way to go. Other guys have been playing this position for a number of years already ahead of him. But there's opportunity, with people gone and young people coming up, and Drake Stoops and Jalil Farooq as your top 2 guys, basically, coming back. There's opportunity. He's got a chance. I'm not 100% sold that he's going to be able to take advantage of that chance just because of the amount of talent that's around him.
Yeah, I look at DJ Graham from 2 sides of this coin. The first one is, this is going to sound silly, but at the spring game, I would like to see him get snaps at wide receiver. Like, that's step 1, right? Because he changed in the middle of the year. There was the number situation of him being the exact same number as Braden Willis. So for him to get on the field, they're going to have to either change his number mid-year, or option B, which is what we saw, which was DJ Graham just did not factor in at all, which is fine for a guy switching positions mid-year, all that stuff. So for me, before you put any expectation on it, it's like I would like to see him in that rotation to start with. So that's going to be the first thing. And Hoover's right. It's just so hard to project because of the unknown that it is. But on the other side of it, too, is there opportunity? Absolutely. But last year, how many guys really played? It was, for the most part, 4. It was Marvin Mims, Jalil Farooq, Drake Stoops, Theo Weiss. Theo Weiss got the starting nod the first half of the year after Texas. Stoops replaced Weiss. And for a majority of that, it was Farooq, Mims, Stoops, Willis, Gray. That was your skill group on the field every snap, it felt like. So we'll have to see if that was a Jeff Lebby, I only use this many guys, and a top-down call, if that was LaDainian Washington filtering up that he really only had the trust in this number of guys, and he hadn't had the entire offseason to help develop, obviously, as he stepped in right at the start of fall camp. So it'll be interesting to see if Emmett Jones has a Hardstead philosophy of I want to have 7 or 8 guys that are rotating in, and he's able to kind of implement that on Jeff Lebby. That'll be a lot more opportunity for DJ Graham. But if not, regardless of if DJ Graham's great, whatever, we may not see him just because of the speed that Oklahoma ran at. Jeff Lebby did not rotate a ton at wide receiver at all, outside of saying, hey, Gavin Freeman, come in for these 2 specifically designed gadget plays, or come in for this or that. Or when you would see like at TCU, when Jane Gibson dropped that pass, it was the second string wide receivers came in for 3 plays. They didn't get a first down. They're off the field, not to be heard from again.
Well, the things we know about DJ Graham are, like we just said, he can obviously catch. He has hands. There's a lot more to it than just that, obviously, but he can catch. We know he works hard. He's a very smart kid. We've got to talk to him a handful of times, and we know that he's very intellectual and things like that, very well spoken, and things of that nature. And we know that he has a passion for offense because Brent Venables said as much, said his heart was on offense whenever he talked about making the position change or the side of the ball change. So I have no idea if it's going to work out or not. It is fun to keep up with and watch. And I will be looking out for him that first spring practice that we're allowed to attend, which will probably be here in just a couple of weeks, I imagine. I'm going to definitely go look at him. How does he look on his routes and things like that? He's kind of an interesting one to watch. And because of that, as we expound this conversation out to the wide receiver room as a whole, because there is a bit of an opening here, obviously, like who Ryan said, you pretty much had 4 receivers last year. Well, 2 of them are gone. Marvin Mims in the NFL. We're talking about him in just a second. And Theo Weiss is over at Missouri now. Farooq is back. I think everybody thinks he's going to assume the throne as number 1. Drake Stoops is Drake Stoops. You know what you're getting from him. He's going to be reliable. He'll be out there a lot of snaps. But then the rest of it is kind of up for grabs. So they have guys, Jaden Gibson, Nick Anderson, Angelo Anthony comes in from Michigan, DJ Graham, Gavin Freeman. There's guys, but who is it going to be in your guys' mind that is going to assert themselves and be that other guy or 2 that Oklahoma will need this year? I think a lot of people like the young guys, Gibson and Anderson, but we haven't seen them yet. Same kind of goes for Angelo Anthony. Who is it in your guys' mind?
I'm going to go with Angelo Anthony as a transfer from Michigan, who's played a lot of big-time football, had a 93-yard touchdown at Michigan State. He knows what rivalries are about. That was on the road, so he knows what intense atmospheres are about. But then you could also say Jaden Gibson, who had a 93 also, 95-yard touchdown last year in the spring game, 75,000 people there watching that. So Micah Bowens was the thrower. That's right. So I really think the athletic talent is there. I just give the edge to Anthony for his experience.
Yeah, the guy I would default to is actually one that is not currently there, that we're not talking about a ton yet because we haven't got to talk to him as part of our big kind of February media day. But Jaquays Petaway, the true freshman coming in, who's just got game-changing speed. But then if you have Petaway, suddenly your wide receiver rotation, and I'm really high on Gavin Freeman as well, what we saw, but your receiver rotation is going to be Farooq, Freeman, Stoops, Petaway. For as much as Jeff Lebby asked this group to block downfield, that's just a lot of very smaller, undersized guys. Not that they can't get it done. So that's where an Angelo Anthony needs to step in. That's where whether it be more contributions from the tight end room, from your Caden Helmses and Jason Llewellyns to go along with Austin Stogner, or having a Nick Anderson come along, a Jaden Gibson, he has to catch the ball first. He had like one opportunity and he wasted Dylan Gabriel's best play of the season and at TCU for me, bobbling it around 80 times and then just dropping it. So it's a lot of unproven guys that have to step up and step in. And so that it's kind of wide open on that front, just because, again, the guys that I would default to are all a similar body type. And that's where a guy that is incredibly long, like an Andrew Anthony, you could see him getting downfield and blocking as well as making plays. A guy like a Nick Anderson, who's big and strong, and OU fans are familiar with what the Anderson family build looks like,
right.
Things like that, of what they can do downfield. So it'll be interesting to see how that kind of mixes in. And again, if there's a mix at all, or if it's just here's the four guys you're going to see, and that's what Jeff Lebby's going to run with.
Can't forget, too.
Yeah, I'll add real quick, Ryan, on Jaquez Petaway. It's going to be tough. He's an extremely talented kid. He's got great burst. He's got good hands. I watched him real close at the All-American stuff when I was down there on the field when they were practicing. I got lots of good images of him, lots of good video and all kinds of stuff, just watching him, just seeing him from 10 feet away, right? He's a freshman. He's an incoming freshman who gets there in June, so that's going to be tough. I think we saw something similar to that with Mario Williams when Mario came in and he had all this hype and Johnny 5-star, and he was kind of a marginal guy for most of that season. It's just tough for a freshman to be able to come in and take, especially at receiver, to be able to come in and take that much coaching and have that much of an understanding of defenses and route running and the nuances that go into getting separation at the top of your routes and things like that. And understanding route trees, which I guess Marvin Mims told us OU doesn't really have. I was about to say, wait a minute.
The Baylor system is not a route tree. It is run fast because Baylor couldn't recruit elite guys. That's why the Baylor wide receivers under Bryles were not first-round draft picks. That's why Oklahoma fans should maybe readjust your expectations of what the NFL caliber these guys are, and we'll get into this later. But that's why I totally agree, freshmen coming in, but if you're coming into any system, Jeff Lebby does not have huge develop route trees, which is fine in college football. That can still be very productive. It's a different game than the NFL. That's not necessarily like a negative. It'll hurt him in recruiting, especially when your marquee guy comes out and just says it bluntly from the podium at the combine. That'll be negatively recruited against all the time. They're probably like, Marvin, you could have saved that for the behind closed doors meetings. But this offense is not going to be hard for receivers to pick up. I don't think it's going to be the trust factor from the coaches, which I think is, again, incredibly valuable, because we saw it last year that the freshmen didn't touch the field and the transfers didn't touch the field. It wasn't just a freshman thing. LV Bunkley Shelton, it took him deep into the season before they even trusted him on the small handful of snaps that he did get. So yeah, getting acclimated it's a different ball game.
I was going to say too, you can't forget he's one of the bigger probably unknowns on the team is JJ Hester. What is that guy? We didn't see him at all last year. Transfer from Missouri, he was hurt. What does he do? I have no idea. And yeah, LV Bunkley Shelton, you kind of throw into that too because we didn't really see him. I think we kind of all wondered would he be back, and he is back. He's doing the winter workouts and stuff. So back into the fold. You have to assume. We don't know LV. We haven't talked to him or anything, but you have to assume he probably wouldn't have come back if he felt like it was going to be the same. He barely played last year. He has to at least think he has a shot to get more snaps. So where does he fit in there? So they have guys, and I should have prefaced everything by saying I'm not concerned, and I don't think you guys are either, with Oklahoma's talent at the receiver position. I don't have it in me to have that. Oklahoma's always been fine at the receiver spot for 20 plus years now, but it's just interesting to wonder who is it going to be. Because yeah, like who said, true freshmen don't often come in. Marvin Mims did do it in 2020. Obviously had a huge freshman season. Mario Williams
37 catches.
He was okay. Mario Williams was okay. What was that? Who?
I said 37 catches for Marvin as a freshman. He was, like you said, okay.
Yeah, he was pretty. He was solid.
9 touchdowns. Yeah, he was very good.
So yeah, it'll be an interesting position to watch, and for a lot of reasons, the new coach, some new bodies, and then who's stepping up. And is Farooq ready to be that number one? Oh, you hope so. You hope so. I think he is, but you hope so.
Yeah, I think for me that's the biggest question is as you talk about filling the shoes of Marvin Mims and the production from Theo Weiss. My big question is, I don't know. I don't like Jalil Farooq, number one wide receiver on a offense that can win the Big 12. Maybe this Big 12, sure, but Farooq is like your number one game changer guy. He does not stack up to what the Alabamas of the world are rolling out there, what the Georgias of the world are rolling out there, based off what we've seen so far. So I'm really interested to see what the development path of, okay, now you've got Emmett Jones, who that's what, it keeps being pumped up, is not just his connections in Dallas, but his love of developing guys and developing that talent. What different do we see added to Jalil Farooq's game coming in this year? Because he's going to have to be that number one guy. It's not going to be a scenario where, remember the first 2 weeks of last year, the ball just hadn't found him. It wasn't because he was not open or anything. And Jeff Leb was talking about how he's just doing a great job of keeping his head down, working, and then it found him at Nebraska finally, and he got going. That's not going to be the case this year. He's got to be that guy that is force-fed by Dylan Gabriel, and I'm interested to see if he's ready for that, just because that was Braden Willis and Marvin Mims, really, for the most part, at the start of the year last year.
Did you guys hear the comment from Marvin Mims about Jalil Farooq? Said he's kind of a Deebo Samuel and that he can do it all, run with the ball, catch the ball, block underneath, all that stuff. That's a great package to have. That's a great thing to have, that kind of versatility and a utility receiver. I don't know if you want your number one guy doing that. I don't know if you want your 70 or 60 catch per season guy touching the football, having to touch the football,
jet sweeps
all over the field. I think you want to be able to get him the football as a number one receiver down the field is the top option.
Can compete with Jackson Arnold as the backup quarterback, though. Take those snaps.
Yeah. Jalil Farooq. I'm a big believer in Jalil Farooq. I think he's a really talented player, but there is something to be said for doing it, obviously, as the number one guy when you don't have Marvin Mims taking a lot of attention, because defenses had to be aware of Marvin Mims at all times. He was capable of an 80-yard touchdown on any play. So not having that, certainly, and Braden Willis, now they have Stogner, they have other talent, but he'll be the guy that teams are watching for early in the year. So that there is something to be said for that. So excited to see what that looks like next season, certainly. Receiver room's interesting. Going to be very interesting. Fun to watch here coming up in spring ball in less than a couple weeks. Talking about Marvin Mims, let's flip over to him in the combine. Ryan, you're going to have to defend yourself. Marvin Mims ran a 4.38. He made money this week in Indy. On last week's show, Ryan did not have a big believer in Marvin's speed. The floor is yours.
Hey, can we roll that clip back? Can we roll the Ryan and he's going to run like a 4.85 or whatever it was?
The 4.5, 4.6 did not happen. Shout out to him. Looks like he's a lot faster when he can focus on running in a straight line for a couple of months. But again, Marvin Mims, great game speed, getting behind defenses when he's not covered. I'll wait on the last time he ran away from somebody because that doesn't happen a whole lot. But no, that's what teams wanted to see, and he went out there. Was it the fourth or fifth fastest time of his entire group out there? I didn't see all of the rest of the day's worth of times go from unofficial to official to see how that went. So he did everything he needed to do to lock himself in as a top 100. Should be a day two guy, absolutely for sure. After running that was, again, that's the only question mark, because he did show off a lot more of his route tree capability under Lincoln Riley because he was asked to, and running that 4.38 is going to be everything teams wanted to see. Not a number one guy, but if a team misses out on their top target and they're sitting there in the second or third round, they're going to come back and be very, very happy with what Marvin posted at the combine and what he's done just as a player.
Yeah, his productivity, remember, going back to high school, guy caught like 5 million passes in high school for like 20 million yards. I mean, he was unbelievable, setting all those records in Frisco. And he comes to Oklahoma, and he's extremely, his first 2 years under Lincoln Riley, underutilized. Jeff Levy comes out. I said last year, I made my bold prediction, remember, was that he was going to lead the Big 12 in catches. He did not. I think he finished top 4, top 5, but he had something like 60-some catches. So he's productive. He knows how to play football. There was some question about the route tree when he said, yeah, we don't really have very detailed route trees at Oklahoma. Didn't have to do that. But I ran a lot of routes in college or in high school, and I've been working on all these routes with my trainer.
Right.
That was shocking to me to hear that level of, we're not that sophisticated at Oklahoma. The offense wasn't that sophisticated. So that was a little bit shocking to hear that. But to know that he shaved that time down to 4.38, I remember my prediction, guys, last week was 4.42. And I wasn't willing to give him the benefit of the doubt just because I'm very dubious when somebody says they run a 4.3 anything. I'm like, no, you don't. No, you don't. Nobody runs a 4.3 anything except the fastest elite of the elite percentage way up here runs the 4.3 anything. And he ran a 4.3 anything. He ran a 4.38. So shout out Marvin Mims. That was impressive.
Yeah, I think the important thing, too, is his speed compared to everybody else. Because if you look the last 2 years, times have been a lot faster since they laid that new turf at Indy. So that's going to be, if you hear that like criticism come, that's probably a team putting a smokescreen out there, because yes, the times the last couple of years have been faster because it's a new turf. But again, like, he has to run on the same turf on the same day as everybody else. And when you're still in like the top five, like, that's all that teams are going to compare him to, is the other prospects in the class. So big moment for him, I think, to again, like I said, lock him in like day 2, no later than that. Second, third round.
100%. Marvin made some money. Some other guys made some money. What other guys stood out? Obviously, there was a few guys who certainly were the winners of the week there on the OU side from Indy. Who was the biggest outside of Marvin for you?
Well, it was the guy that I told you needed to make a move or had the best opportunity to make a move. My prediction was as spot on as any prediction I've ever offered. Jalen Redmond. I had no idea Jalen Redmond was going to post the number 2 40 time in the defensive lineman, the number 1 vertical jump, the number 1 broad jump, the number 1 cone drill. All this stuff that he did was just like, people are. I remember the scouting report from Lance Zierlein, NFL.com, NFL evaluator out of Houston. I've known Lance, through radio and through other things, just talking, exchanging DMs or tweets or texts or talking to him on the radio. I respect that dude a lot. And when he said, when his evaluation was, he is, I can't remember the quote exactly, a very unathletic defensive lineman, something like that, something along those lines. I was just like, you must have watched the wrong defensive lineman at Oklahoma. He's the most athletic defensive lineman they have. He should have been playing all these years defensive end in a 4-3 setup to really maximize his skills. Slimmed down to about 275, and I think he could have done that. I think he could have been great at it. But boy, to perform like he did with all those guys around him, all his peers around him, and all those coaches and all those scouts and all those GMs and all those personnel managers watching him work out, you can't help but think he jumped at least 2 or maybe 3 rounds just from his workout. Now, I'm not saying he's going to be a first rounder or second rounder or anything like that, but he went from a late day 3 guy to a day 2 guy, possibly.
Remember, Jalen Redmond was a hooper too at Midwest City High School.
That's right.
He could ball.
Baller.
Yeah, and for him too, that's one of those, we made I don't know if comparison's the right word, but it's a similar situation to the Isaiah Thomas conversation last year of when teams are evaluating him, they had to figure out, okay, he's split time between 2 different positions on the defensive line. What do we see him as? All that stuff. Well, if you have all of those measurables, that makes that conversation in those rooms a lot easier, because coaches are now looking for reasons to, and scouts and GMs are looking for reasons to talk themselves into why I can take that guy and mold him for this exact position, as opposed to going, well, he's a tweener, and then look at his 40 time or things like that. And so that was big for Jalen Redmond. I thought Anton Harrison had a good weekend as well. He was a guy that we've talked about, has a lot to gain as far as slotting himself higher and higher in the first round, just because of it appears there still isn't a great consensus around the tackles right now. And tackles are going to go like hotcakes in the first round. They do every single year. It's the premium position along the offensive line as far as draft position, all that goes. And so Anton Harrison, you paired what he did physically on the field with some of the quotes from, like Felix Nduke-Ozoma from K-State that was like, yeah, he was the toughest guy I went against all year, all that stuff. I think that that's going to only help him as teams try to sort out what they're going to do at the tackle spot.
Yeah, Anton Harrison seems destined for the first round. We talked about that a little bit last week.
Yep.
Also want to shout out Eric Gray as well. He continues a really good draft cycle for him. Obviously, we talked about it at the time. He was really good in the Senior Bowl that week of practice. And I think teams are beginning to and will and already have fall in love with his ability to catch passes, because he was making some really nice highlight level catch. He had some of the best catches of the week in Indy, he was as a running back. And teams love that, as you would guess. And so Eric Gray is going to get drafted by somebody, and he has a chance, I think, to be a little bit of a obviously very, very different player, not comparing the type of player, but similar to Ramondre, where he gets drafted kind of in a later round, and then a team just falls in love with him, and they're like, actually, this guy rules. I think Eric Gray has some potential for that. Not that he's going to be a number one featured back reading the NFL and rushing everything, but he's going to have a role for himself in the NFL. I feel confident in that. Big believer in Eric Gray as well. So, yeah, you got anything else you want to add?
I agree. Poor Wanye Morris popped his hamstring at the end, grade 2 hamstring sprain at the end of his 40. He was doing okay. He ran, I think, a 5.11. What's that?
Why are linemen even running 40s?
They should just run the 20s.
It's something they never do, and it's amazing it doesn't happen more often. Guys get hurt.
And they do those cone drills, which are important for pulling and mobility, and when you got a defensive end that's moving on various directions, or you've got guys crossing over, you got to be able to move back and forth. So those are huge. And I thought he did well there, but man, popped his hamstring.
Yeah.
And may not be able to go at his pro day if he's going to try and get well. That's his directive right now, is to get your hamstring well. Well, if you're focused on rehab and rehabbing a muscle, a grade 2 sprained muscle, then you're not training. You're not improving your times. You're not improving your jumps. So that's just too bad for him. I still think he'll get drafted. I think he's got too much experience and had too good of a season last year to go undrafted. But another one I was a little bit surprised by, had a bad showing numbers wise, guys, was Braden Willis, Captain Willis, weight room Willie. They talk about his performance in the weight room and running and doing all that stuff. I thought he was excellent in the receiving drills that they ran. And it's a little bit hard to get a read on how a guy can block basically when he's in his underwear, right? Like they do at the combine. So his strength, the best thing he does, which is blocking on the move, blocking, in a mobility type situation, he was not allowed to really kind of showcase what he could do in his real strength. So he had to do some other things. And when you put him up against some, possible first round draft picks in the NFL group, or the tight end group, you look at his times, there's no other way to say it. He struggled. I don't know if he was like having fight through some sickness or injury or didn't feel well or what, but I was very surprised that his times were every one of them was way down at the bottom of that, of the tight end list. That was surprising to me.
Yeah. And that was a bummer for him, because we talked about that you get him in front of teams and start talking to him, and he's the kind of guy that GM, scouts, coaches are always going to love. But some of those teams need that reason of, okay, this guy ran a time that we didn't think. Now let's go circle back. Now let's go watch more film and let's see him actually block and things like that. And so that hurts for him. On the Wanye front, obviously the injury stinks. Hate to see that for anybody. But for Wanye, he needed to go and interview well, because that's going to be the big question for him is, why were you unable to make an impact 2 seasons ago? Why did you miss the first couple of games this last season? Are you going, this is not college anymore where people are looking after you. Are you going to be available for us? Or is this going to be the same story of little things, not bad person or anything like that, but just little things that keep popping up that get in the way of you staying on the football field? That's the most important thing for Wanye. And that's one of those things that we're not in those rooms, and you can't get a solid read until after the draft, because it's smokescreen season and all that stuff. Right.
Something else about Braden, just to finish this point, when he gets to the pro day on the 30th, right? I think is what it was, or was it the 20th?
30th.
Anyway, it's coming up 30th. When he gets to pro day, he'll be more comfortable. He'll sleep in his own bed the night before, right? He won't have to worry about a whole bunch of interviews that are lined up. A couple of teams will want to talk to him. I did hear from some NFL people that cover teams very closely that he interviewed exquisitely. He was a master on the whiteboard and in the face-to-face interviews. So they love him. They love his knowledge. And the thing is maybe he just was out of his element a little bit. We've seen it. I talked about it before with Curtis Lofton. When you're out of your element, your body's just not functioning right. Maybe something like that came up when he gets to Norman, and maybe those numbers will be more representative of what he can actually do. So that's what you're hoping, is that he's able to sharpen those numbers and lower those a little bit. So teams won't be scared to draft him. They see the production, they see the blocking on film. They've met him, they've talked to him. They're impressed by his knowledge. But boy, his numbers are just not good. So he's got to get those numbers up to ensure that he gets a good draft spot.
He'll have a couple weeks to regroup too, because remember we talked about this last year, just how the schedule shook out. Combine happens, and it was this week last year, Big 12 Championship week, that Josh and I were at Pro Day with you, Hoove, and then we head to Kansas City. That gave the guys, anyone who had a bad anything, if, hey, I want to do more on the bench or anything like that, no time to go back and say, I'm going to hone in on this drill and work on it. And so that kind of hurt those guys last year in the process. That won't be an issue this year. So they'll have a little under a month, but some time to hone in on what do they want to improve, what do they need to improve, and they'll have a chance to have a better moment at Pro Day.
Yeah, Braden will be a big one to watch, obviously, at the Pro Day 3 weeks from today. And also, did you guys see who's going to be making his return to Norman for the Pro Day?
No, I didn't see that.
The reunition, I just invented a word, of Turk and Burke. Gabe Burkich is coming back to Norman for Pro Day to kick in front of scouts and stuff like that. Obviously, a totally lost year for him. But he's coming back, and Michael Turk's going to hold for him. So there we go. Turk and Burke one last time for old time's sake.
Hold football.
There will be no burritos involved.
Hold footballs, not burritos. Exactly.
Yes.
Yeah.
That's something, isn't it? When your kicker who's been out of college football for a year has to join Pro Day. And what's he going to do? He's not going to run. He's not going to lift. He's not going to jump. He's going to kick footballs.
Bob Stoops, where are you at? He should be kicking for the Renegades right now.
That's true.
That's true. What your pay salary is, your salary scale is for kickers in the XFL.
The 2-1 Arlington Renegades, by the way.
Good enough for Marquette King, who has survived that relation. I was curious how Marquette King was going to get along. He has survived so far. Punting, not kicking. But
yeah, so Gabe Burkich will get to have one last year after Pro Day, they gave us like all the players one at a time at the podium. So we get to probably have one last Gabe Burkich just toying with the media session if he wants it. We'll see if that's what happens in 3 weeks' time. But looking forward to that.
Just got to parallel park it in between.
That's right. Parallel park it into the uprights.
Oh,
our good friend.
He sees his guy Turk to hold for him, so they can get the Turk and Burke. And then if teams are smart, they'll not draft Burkich, but they'll pick them both up.
Our good friend Ross Lovelace can handle the Gabe Burkich presser for me. I'll be out on getting my time wasted by Gabe Burkich.
We've hit our Burkich quota from that 2021 season. We got him like 5 times. It was crazy. All right.
In the first 6 weeks.
Yeah, it was. Couldn't get enough. Couldn't get enough of him. All right, that's it for us. We'll take a timeout here. We'll come back. We'll hit some other sports. We'll do the in memoriam for the basketball season. Really bad. We'll wrap that up. Women's hoops, huge week ahead for them in Kansas City. We'll preview that a little bit. Wrap up the Diamond Sports. Both teams are rolling, and we'll send you on your way. Next up, final segment, the AllSooners Podcast. Final segment of the AllSooners Podcast, episode 177 on this March 9th, 2023. Send you on your way into your spring weekend here. All right, one final time. Let's do it. Men's hoops. It's over. Our long national nightmare is over. They lost the Big 12 tournament opener last night to OSU. That's really probably the biggest plus of us having to move the show over a day, was that we got to do the full season recap here, because they lost OSU last night. They scored 49 freaking points. The offense was as dreadful as it's ever been. They're one and done in Kansas City. They officially went the entire 2023 without winning 2 games in a row. Last time they won 2 games in a row was in December, which is nuts. Horrible season, 15-17. What can you say? They're not going to be in the NIT. I don't believe. I don't think they're going to get a bid. I don't think the NIT is going to want them. What can you say, guys? It was a really bad year, and it ended with an absolute thud. It was a really, really ugly game last night, and they lose Bedlam for the 3rd time one of the most damning stats I've seen for Porter Moser, and I think he should be back, and he will be back. 1-8 against OSU in Texas. 1-8. Can't have that. Can't have that.
Did we see a tweet last night from Eli Letterman from the Tulsa World? First time since the 60s?
64-65 season.
Since they've lost 3 times to Oklahoma State. Coincidentally, that's also the last time both football and basketball had a losing record, 64-65. So it must have sucked to be a Sooner fan back then, I'm sure.
Rough times right now.
Hard to believe, not that much better right now. Again, I'll fall back on the press conference. You watch them play. They're playing hard. They're gutting it out. They're keeping good attitudes. They're trying their hardest. You love that. They're competing all the way to the end. And I saw that last night. They were pressing. They were trying to getting tipped passes and knocking loose balls around at the end of the game when they had no chance to win. So you love that. I'm taking a altruistic approach here. There's a lot to like about this team. And one of those things is they play hard. One of those things is most nights, almost every night, they try hard. You don't get that all the time out of your teams. And you listen to Grant Sherfield, you listen to Tanner Groves last night in the press conference, and they're grateful for their time at Oklahoma. They both transferred from another school. They both came here to win games, and they both leave here better men because they formed relationships that they're going to have for the rest of their lives, and coaching staff and teammates and whatnot. So, again, I fall back on that because I'm a little torn. You absolutely have to play basketball better. These guys all know that. Porter Moser knows that. But at the same time, they accomplished a lot. They got some really impressive wins, some fun wins, some wins that they're gonna put kind of in their memory banks for life. I know I'm being soft right now, but I tend to do that when seasons come to a crashing thud like last night did.
Right.
Don't think the NIT is going to invite them, but the NIT still could invite them. They take teams with losing records. That changed a couple of years ago. So it's possible that they could be an NIT team. I would hope that it's not in Norman if they do. You know what I mean? This team,
it won't be.
We've all kind of been force-fed 32 games of mostly bad basketball.
I thought you were going to say that you were taking that approach because you knew that I was speaking next on the podcast.
Absolutely, you're the hard ass in this group when it comes to men's basketball.
It's the Big 12. Showing up and having great experiences, that's a joke.
It's a big boy basketball.
You're playing.
Go play intramural, brother.
Yeah, that's a joke. The game plan last night. This is not a player thing. I thought Porter Moser was embarrassed. Mike Boynton is not a good X's and O's coach. He's a great recruiter and a great defensive coach, but to get outfoxed basically 3 times this year by Mike Boynton, that's really damning. That makes me pause when people say, but no, Porter Moser's a good coach. I'm just like, really? Because there's a lot of good coaches in the Big 12, and none of them get outfoxed 3 times by Mike Boynton.
Outfoxed or out-hustled, out-athleticism.
OSU is a horrible matchup for you.
The game plan that Oklahoma came into last night was to feed Tanner Groves in the low post. That's what they did over that 8-minute field goal drought. You, me, Josh, we could have told you, hey, what's the biggest mismatch on the floor? It's OSU's bigs versus Oklahoma's bigs. And Oklahoma had taken 6 of their first 19 shots from 3-point range. 6. That's the only way Oklahoma wins basketball games, is if they can spread it out and shoot from deep. Tanner Groves got stuffed by Caleb Asbury under the bucket. That was the game plan from Porter Moser. Mister, I watch all of this tape all the time. I grind tape. You watched 80 minutes of OU and Oklahoma State, and you came out with, let's feed Tanner Groves with your season on the line when you got to win 4 games against Musa Cisse. That's a joke. I'm sorry. They bookended the season with their 2 lowest scoring outputs. The lowest scoring output before last night was 51 points in the opener against Sam Houston. They finished the season with 49 points in a do-or-die must-win, where Oklahoma State didn't really play that well offensively. They did not shoot well. That's the only reason OU was still in the basketball game. There are big changes that got to come this offseason, or it's going to be the exact same. Porter Moser wants to talk about development. CJ Nolan was an all-freshman selection last year. He was not even a factor in the rotation this year. That's not development. Milos Uzan and Owe, To be fair to Porter, those are his recruits. Bijan and CJ Nolan committed to Lon Kruger. But if you're going to do the we have to grow old thing, you got to work with anyone that's on the roster. Otherwise, you're going to be diving into the portal again, where Porter's not had any success with a big man. Joe Bamisilla, Marvin Johnson have come in back-to-back years. You're both athletic player, not used. Like, Porter Moser's got to do some soul searching this offseason on top of improving that roster, or next year's going to be bad again, and then you have 3 awful years head of the SEC. That's not going to be tenable.
Well, that's the thing with Porter, right? What's the joke? People call him Portal Moser, because he's been so good in the transfer portal. The hit rate is really low right now with the transfers. Grant Sherfield was a bust. He wasn't what they hoped he would be. He had good moments, but overall, he was very unreliable. He wasn't any good last night.
Wouldn't say
Most time
15.9 points a game is a bust.
Well, when they needed him, he was never there. I mean, he wasn't what they hoped him to be.
The last 5 games, I think what was the stat I had in the column today? 24 of their first 30 games or something like that. In the 22 of their first 28 games, he was the leading scorer, and 0 of the last 5. So he absolutely, I think he wore down from having to carry everybody so much.
Maybe. When they needed him, he was never there. Maybe that's me being from watching him all year, but it didn't feel like he was reliable at any point. Joe Bamisile, he was a bust. He didn't hardly even play at all this year. Tanner Groves, we all thought he maybe be this Cameron Krutwig type guy. He was okay, but he never could match up with these Big 12 bigs. That for 2 years we had to watch that. Jacob Groves had a really tough year. He did not have a good season. He got off to a good start, and he got taken out of the lineup. The list goes on. These guys that were added that just didn't really work out. Marvin Johnson, like Ryan said, so they got to find a way. I mean, the key here, and it can turn around quick. It's college basketball. It's a small roster. It can turn around quick. If Caden Cooper and Jacob Cole come in and they are what OU hopes they are, and you retain Milos Uzan, who looks like he's a stud, Otega Owa develops, you actually get a legit big, which OU hasn't really done in a long time. You can go back to
I wouldn't hold your breath on that. Porter's shown no ability to recruit.
That's been a problem. Then they could be a lot better, but that's a lot of ifs. So, yeah, what can you say? It was a rough year. Who have you said right at the beginning of the year? It was like the first thing that they'll go as far as Grant Sherfield took them. And when it was big games, Grant Sherfield went away. He was too quiet in big spots too many times this year. He had some big games, but I don't know. Ryan, you can be the tiebreaker on the Sherfield. I'm more harsh on him. Who's a little nicer? Where you land? You're harsh generally.
Yeah, I think that Sherfield did wear down. Bust for what this team needed him to be. Bust for what your expectation was coming out of the portal. Then I think that the issue was he was going to fill the spot of Emoja Gibson, which Emoja was he'll give you 30 points a couple of nights. He'll no show on 5 or 6 nights. That's exactly what Grant Sherfield did. He had very high highs, a couple of total no shows. I think that was a push, and I think it just shows that Porter Moser failed in the rest of the roster construction. I go back to the Kansas game in Norman. Bill Self is talking about how they're going to have to defend at the level that they need to defend at to win the Big 12, win a national championship, all that stuff. And Porter Moser's talking about developing young guys. And that just showed me Oklahoma played a different game than every other team in the Big 12 conference this year, which is trying to develop young guys. I mean, I had one of my buddies who's a big OSU fan. He was texting me last night and he's like, he was trying to work through Porter's process because he's like, do you know how many of OSU's starters last night, Oklahoma State, who just, per Joe Lunardi, punched their ticket to the NCAA tournament, how many of OSU's starters were OSU recruits out of high school or transfers? 5 of 5 were transfers. 52 of the 57 points Oklahoma State scored last night came from transfers. Transfers is how you win in college basketball today, unless you're getting one and dones. Porter Moser's not going to get one and dones. He's got to figure out how to recruit transfers successfully because they haven't done it. They were out of the tournament last year. They're not in NIT bracketology this year.
I looked at multiple NIT bracketologies. Multiple, which is crazy that there are multiple. That's a thing. There are multiple out there, and I perused, and they were not on any of them. So I don't anticipate NIT, and now you head to the offseason. Like I said, you need Jacob Cole and Caden Cooper to be what they hope they are. You need to retain Milos Uzan, which I haven't heard anything as far as if he would leave or not. But after a year like this, you have to wonder, Otega Owa too. And a big decision is going to be coming down for Jalen Hill. what does he do? Because Oklahoma, he was, in my opinion, Oklahoma's best player this year, certainly the most consistent player. What does he do? And that's a big, big question mark for Oklahoma. He has another year if he wants it. Does he just go ahead and go and try and make a pro career doing something overseas or something? Or does he come back and go somewhere else for a year or do the Brady Manick thing? Or does he come back to Oklahoma? That's a big question for OU.
Sherfield, too.
Yeah, he's a huge piece of that. Too.
Yeah, Tanner Groves is
the only guy who can't come back. So lots of decisions will be made here soon for Oklahoma. But we'll see.
Real quick, Oklahoma averaged on defense 67.5 points per game allowed. I don't know what the pace was, Ryan. You probably know better where they're ranked pace. It's the bottom quartile for sure, if not lower. But 67.5 points per game on defense. On offense, they're 10th in the Big 12 at 67.7. What does that tell you? They've got to get better. They've got to be able to put the ball in the basket. When Porter Moser doesn't have options, I'll take you back to and by the way, they're last in the conference in scoring margin, 0.1 points per game. My math says that's 0.2, but apparently the Big 12 has better numbers than me. But I'll take you back to the preseason when Porter Moser said it was like early, like August. I seem to remember we sat at a press conference and he said Grant Sherfield is a great shot clock guy. That immediately set red alarms off in my head, right? Like, okay, that's good to know. That's good to have, but you can't rely on that. I mean, he made a big point of it. He didn't just say it once. He said it like 4 or 5 times in this one answer, or maybe a couple answers. Great shot clock guy. When the shot clock's winding down, we know we can give him the ball and go get us a bucket. That's good, but you probably need that maybe 3 times in a college basketball game, maybe 4 at the most. If you're relying on that more times than not, something's wrong with your offense, and we see that with 67 points a game.
Yeah, OU finished 266th in pace out of 363 in the country. They did have some improvement, though, as Iowa State somehow sandbagged below them. Iowa State was the slowest team in the Big 12 at 283rd in pace. North Texas is still dead last. Grant McCaslin is a hot name for the Texas Tech job. So I'm just telling you right now, the Iowa State, Texas Tech, and the Oklahoma Texas Tech matchups next year, no team is getting to over 50. Like, they're going to be disgusting basketball games. And that's like,
up in whose neck of the woods, old Paul Mills doesn't take the old stroll to Lubbock, because that could get ugly for the rest of the Big 12 if he gets the right
I think Oklahoma's hoping he stays at Oral Roberts for one more year.
Wow. He's probably going to have the biggest run in the NCAA tournament from teams out of the state of Oklahoma. And there should be very interesting looks in both Norman and Stillwater based off of what they've gotten from their coaches over their respective tenures.
I don't think Oklahoma State's going to make the tournament. I think they're going to lose to Texas today. This could age very poorly. I think they're going to lose to Texas today, and then they won't make it. And so Oral Roberts will be the only team for Oklahoma to make it.
But they did beat Oklahoma, so they should be in the tournament. They beat Oklahoma 3 times, so they should be in the tournament, right?
That's a big, huge feather in the cap.
That's what Lenardi said.
They crushed OU's ass for a 3rd time. Now they're definitely a tournament team. Makes no sense. Explain it to me, Joe. Explain it to me.
Yeah, Oklahoma's the barometer for NCAA tournament teams. It's not.
Well, it's just they already did it twice. Like, what new data came across?
How did that work out for Villanova and Arkansas?
They did it in Stillwater, they did it in Norman, they did it in Kansas City. Caleb Boone, OU's going to be very glad that guy is going away. They don't need to see that guy anymore because he owns OU and he likes it. He loves it. Nobody takes more pleasure in dominating OU than Caleb Boone. So, yeah, into the offseason they go, and lots of decisions to be made. Porter Moser will be back. I know fans are doing the whole, fire him thing. Not happening. He'll be back. So we'll see what happens, what moves they can make. The portal will be active again for OU, and they got to hope that they hit on more of them. Because, guys like Joe Bamisile who were expected to come in and be a big part of the team and then just didn't hardly play, can't have that. So we'll see what happens. And like we said, lots of decisions. Only Tanner Groves can't come back. Everybody else can, if they want, come back. So lots of decisions coming up for this roster. All right, shifting over to the women. Big comeback win in Stillwater to win Bedlam. They are co-Big 12 champs, which is kind of a funny thing because they got swept by Texas. So it doesn't feel like they should be, but that's not how it works. They are co-Big 12 champs. Big accomplishment for that team, considering what that program was just a couple years ago. Obviously, was irrelevant before Jenny Bronchen got there, and now they're co-champs in the Big 12. They are right on the border of hosting or not. It's going to come down to what they do in Kansas City this week. They're the 2 seed, so they obviously skipped the first round. They're going to have 3 wins. If they win the Big 12 tournament, they will host. Anything short of that, I don't know. I don't know. But it's a big week for them in Kansas City, and a big accomplishment certainly to rally from behind, beat OSU in Stillwater, and be co-conference champs. Pretty cool.
Get to the finals, lose to Texas again. I think there's a pretty good chance they host. Decent chance. Win the whole thing, then I would say they host. Yeah. But they've got bigger fish to fry than worried about hosting right now. They lost by 20 and 22 to Texas. Uh-huh. And yet they claim co-championships. The Big 12 is goofy. Remember 2012, Kansas State beat Oklahoma head-to-head, and they split the Big 12 championship. That's just the way the Big 12 is set up. You play a round robin, you play everybody, you have the same number of games, you have the same number of losses. Guess what? You tie. So it's a weird feeling. They went back to Lloyd Noble. I saw some people talking at the Regents meeting I was at. There was some discussion about OSU fans were mad because word was getting around that OU fans, or OU the team, brought the ladders and cut down the nets at Gallagher High. And that's of course not true. They celebrated, they held up the little signs, and they jumped up and down and they held up the trophy. And then the coach came over, the OSU coach came over, Jason came over and said, we're trying to do senior night here. Y'all need to leave. And of course, Jenny wasn't having any of that. What a great moment in women's college basketball. What a great moment in Bedlam women's basketball that there was nearly a throwdown on the floor after the game. That whole situation is flawed. Number one, this is advice to everybody, every team in every sport at every level. Simple stuff. Host your senior night before the game. You worried that your players, your guys, your girls are too distracted? Too bad. Tell them to focus in, have fun with their family, take the flowers, wave to the fans, hold the jersey, whatever. But get focused on the game and do it before the game. Don't do it after. Don't ever do it after, because we saw the product of it. Idiotic. It's just idiotic. And then the other thing for OSU fans that are complaining about OU celebrating on their court, or the OSU team that's complaining, they just won the conference championship, a share of it. They just won the conference championship on your court. Number one, beat them if you don't want them to do that. Number two, if they do that, get out of their way and let them have their moment. I didn't understand any of that. That was idiotic all the way around.
It's perfect that this is one of the last couple of moments that will happen in the Big 12 for Oklahoma, because, yeah, from top to bottom, I think you covered it perfectly. From all sides of it, it was confusing. And now it really masked what the actual story out of Bedlam should have been, because Oklahoma, I don't care what it says, Texas won the Big 12 this year. You got embarrassed twice against them. They're your Big 12 regular season champions. I don't care what the shares say, all that crap. But Oklahoma doesn't know if Maddie Williams is going to be able to play in the Big 12 tournament. Yeah. Maddie Williams exited that game early. Jenny Baranczyk this week just basically said they still don't know. They still don't have a firm timeline to give an update or anything like that. Well, Kansas and TCU are in that matchup that's going to funnel into the OU game. I believe it's Kansas and TCU. If that's the case, TCU stinks, so it should be Kansas. Like, Kansas is going to go. Oklahoma had to come from behind in Norman to beat that Kansas team. They needed some defensive stops at Fog Allen to close them out. Oklahoma still hasn't beat an actual team of note outside of Iowa State when Suarez went down in the opening minutes. Oklahoma's got to worry about just beating Kansas first. And then it's Iowa State and Baylor, two teams that Oklahoma split the regular season series with. That would be the semifinal before you even worry about Texas. Oklahoma's got a really long road in Kansas City, especially if there's no Maddie Williams, just because that's one of the key cogs of this Oklahoma machine. Everyone who's watched this team plays knows. And so it's no cakewalk anyway. And that's before you even discuss, will they get a shot at Texas or anything like that? Because I think they're going to have to beat Texas to host, because the net rankings do not like Oklahoma, and for good reason, because, again, they haven't beat anybody.
Yeah. Ryan, help me out. I watched the video about 100 times. Okay, maybe about 15 times. Maddie got her foot stepped on, just her left foot. Was it stepped on? She didn't roll it because both her feet were planted. She was on defense, and it looked like an OSU player came down the lane and collided with her and stepped on her foot. Is that all it was?
It was really tough to tell. So that was happening right as Oklahoma and Kentucky softball were playing their second matchup, the first one on Saturday. So I was just trying to watch replays, and there wasn't like a great, like, of the replays, that's what it looked like. Obviously, like, just rolling your ankle, you would have had a timeline by now or anything like that. So I'm not sure if there was anything else or if it was just unfortunate. I'm not saying this is what happened to Maddie, but like my sister, she played soccer. She got her foot stepped on one time, and then we all thought, okay, you get your foot stepped on a million times a game, and she had tendon issues that kept her out for 2 weeks. So there are just weird stuff that can happen, even if it's something as innocuous as looks like you just kind of stepped on each other and landed weird. So it's been tough to tell. There's just not been a ton of info because it sounds like Oklahoma doesn't have a firm timeline for Maddie.
Yeah, obviously, probably Oklahoma. Yeah, Oklahoma's best player. So hopefully she can get back in there sooner than later. Yeah, and to tie up too, real quick, because I know that people will probably comment it, and I saw a lot of it on Twitter that OU did their senior night after their game as well against Kansas State.
You run the risk
the game before
of being embarrassed.
It's still stupid.
They should not have done that either. Yeah,
nothing that we just articulated all of a sudden goes away because OU did it. It's still dumb,
right?
But also it's extra levels of ill-advised for OSU because OU wins the conference if they win. So they're going to have at least and that's going to be extra brutal. And OU almost lost that Kansas State game, and it would have been a very awkward and sad senior thing, but they won, so it worked out. But they should move that thing before. The men do it before, so I don't know why it would even be different at OU. Why would you? That makes no sense, but whatever.
Yeah, I don't get it. I'm trying to remember what my daughter's teams did when she was in high school and college. Frankly, I don't recall. I'm just having trouble recalling. I'm sure I could figure it out, but I've always thought whenever the opportunity was there, she was on teams competing at a high level that they did the senior day after, and I'm just like, this is a bad idea. And there were tears. It was like, oh, we just lost our last game. It sucks. And they're out there trying to be,
yeah.
Like I said, with the parents and the flowers and the little brother and the jersey, and it's like, oh, we just so it's just dumb.
You're taking
dumb.
Don't photos do it. In like your disgusting jersey too, uniform, and like you're all sweaty. Right, take it when you look clean. You just started the game. You haven't played yet.
Mm-hmm.
Obvious. It's very obvious. It's a most obvious solution ever, right there in your face. All right, shifting over to Diamond Sports to wrap up. Softball do what they do. I did this all last year, too. I don't know what to add. They destroyed Kentucky, destroyed them the first game. The second game was a beatdown, too, but not like the first game. They went undefeated in their home opening weekend. They're still number one. They're not going to lose very many games at all. I mean, we know that. Did their thing.
Yeah,
Here's the beauty of softball. Here's the beauty of what Patty Gasso has to work on right now and work through. Is they played UIC before they played Kentucky. And it was 1-0 after the first at bat, basically. Jada Coleman, I think she hit the solo home run to lead off the game. And it was 1-0 after the fourth inning, if I'm not mistaken. Might have been they scored 2 and it was 3-0. But anyway, through 3.5 innings, I believe it was still 1-0. And you're like, wait a minute, what? So they struggled to live up to their own standard. They struggled to pour on a bunch of runs against a team that was winless, 0-14. They struggled, and there's no other way to say it. They ended up winning the game, scoring a couple of late runs, won the game 5-0. And Patty brings him in the locker room, clubhouse, talks to him, gives him one of those kind of talking tos, and they came out and absolutely obliterated number 17 Kentucky. So that's the beauty of what she's got to work with. She's got the talent on that team. Now it's up to Patty to push the buttons and move the chess pieces around and say, here's how good we can be. Because that UIC thing, even the players said, yeah, we could feel it. It just wasn't there for us. But we came out against Kentucky and we were all up. Now they know what their ceiling is.
Yeah, and I think that's been the difference of this year's team to last year's team. Last year, that lineup was essentially the same lineup. It was basically the same lineup from 2021. You replaced Nicole Mendez. That was like the big piece that you replaced. This year, you've got freshman and a Jocelyn Erickson that's coming in. You've got transfers left, right, and center. A lot of people that are getting acclimated, not just to life at Oklahoma, competing for your spot every day, but the fact that you get everyone's best shot. And I think last year's team understood that. You're getting a ton of consistency in the circle between Nicole May, Alex Storako, and Jordy Ball. But Patty Gasso said in that postgame on Friday night that she did not know what was going to happen in that Kentucky game. She was like, I hope that they respond. She'd also echoed that she didn't quite know what was going to happen against UCLA when they took the field, right? And so I think what Patty Gasso is looking for is, okay, we've seen the highs. Now you need to find that consistency, and that consistency doesn't mean putting 18 runs on every single team or anything like that. It's just a matter of when you're playing a really bad winless UIC team and you can't string a couple of base hits together every inning, like that is concerning, and she wasn't happy with the approach. So I think that is basically what Patty Gasso is looking for, and as they head to the Bulldog Invitational this week, Mississippi State's not very good. They're not really even receiving top 25 consideration. Southeast Louisiana, Omaha, two teams that are not very good. I think what Patty Gasso just wants is consistency out of that lineup. And that'll be the next thing, because they obviously get up for the big games, and they've already shown they embarrassed UCLA. They hit 5 home runs in the 4th inning against Kentucky. There are teams that still haven't hit 5 home runs yet across college softball. There are a lot of those teams. So talent's there. They're just trying to find that base level of consistency week to week.
Wrapping up with some baseball, I told everyone to show some patience. They started 2-4, and the sky was falling, and they've now won 6 of 7. Team is good. They are mashing right now. The offense got off to a really slow start, but they've turned that around big time. Easton Carmichael, this freshman catcher, I'm not going to say he has replaced Jimmy Crooks yet, because Jimmy Crooks was really good offensively and defensively and massaging the pitching staff and all that. He's everything you wanted in a catcher. But Easton Carmichael is a stud. He is absolutely smacking the ball right now. They're hitting. They're playing defense. Pitching had a little bit of the last few games haven't been as good at the start, but they're doing well enough. Bullpen's been a little better. And when you're hitting the way they are, they make up for it, basically. They were down 6-1 yesterday to UNLV, and they came back and won. And it never felt like they were out of the game. They really didn't. The way that they have been hitting and scoring runs, Kendall Pettis has started to get it going, and you're starting to see that of what you and I saw so much in Omaha, which is dropping a bunt, stealing bases, taking the extra bag. They're doing a lot of that right now, and they're playing really well. And they have a confidence and a swagger to them that's fun to watch. And Jackson Nicholas, we talked to him yesterday after the game. He basically was saying, this year's team is a new identity. We're not trying to just be last year's team, but he admitted, like, there are some similarities in the way that they play and that belief that they're never out of a game and things like that. So they're a lot of fun to watch. It's still really early, but they've won 6 of 7 and they're playing really, really well right now. I think people are getting excited, and rightfully so.
Josh, I think you made reference to this last week, that the guys who were returning from their freshman season were not producing offensively. I think Jackson Nicholas going into last weekend was hitting about 240.
Mm-hmm.
Wallace Clark right now is hitting about 216, and then John Spikerman's hitting 157. But those 2 games that I monitored for you last week, it was Spikerman and it was Nicholas who turned. One had 2 home runs and 5 RBIs, and the other one had some late inning hits. Spikerman with a couple of RBIs in big situations. So you like that. I mean, you anticipate that there's going to be a sophomore slump. That's just a natural progression. Not everybody has to do it. Everybody doesn't have to go through it, but it's very, very, very common for a freshman who was shown the way by a lot of seniors, a lot of forceful leaders like that team had last year. Those guys move on. Those freshmen step up into now leadership roles for these younger guys. It's not always smooth. In fact, it's very seldom smooth. And I think that's what some of these guys were going through. They're starting to kind of round into shape now. As you said, offensively, they're currently in a situation where they're raking. Easton Carmichael, 391 batting average. His slugging percentage is 106.4. Anthony McKenzie's at 431. His slugging percentage is 106.5. Carmichael's got 2 of their 5 triples and 2 of their 9 home runs. So he is absolutely off to an absolutely fire start.
Yeah, that'll do. It feels like almost the inverse of like softball, where you're like, okay, you felt like the offense was going to come online, and it was just a matter of you have new arms that you're having to work through. And we know as the year goes on, Skip Johnson, the work that he does, they'll get that sorted. It just feels like the pitching staff's looking for that consistency from outing to outing because they looked really good in some of those games down there in the showcase where they picked up a couple of big wins. And then there was, one or two where like the Mississippi State game, just a lot of runs on the board both ways. And so that's that thing of as the season goes on, there's one area that you're like, that's going to get dramatically better. It's what Skip Johnson does with his pitching staff as the year presses on.
Yeah, playing well. Jackson Nicholas 4 for 4 on Tuesday, so he's turned the corner. He had a hit yesterday too. They're playing well. Good stuff. And they have a big series with Houston coming up, future Big 12 foe, Houston, this weekend. Houston's not great. They're off to a bit of a slow start. It's still really early in the season, so I'm hesitant to say anybody's not good or anything, but a bit of a slow start for them. So good chance for Oklahoma to keep it rolling, I think. And Big 12 play actually starts next week. Starts a week early this year for OU. They drew there's 9 teams in the Big 12. So obviously there's an open week, and so some teams start a little early, and that's OU this year. They play TCU next weekend. So schedule's going to ramp up soon. Big 12 is a good baseball conference, so we'll find out more about how they go, but they're playing really well right now, and excited to see what they do here coming up. Any last things?
I got nothing.
Got nothing.
We covered it all. You kidding me?
We hit it all.
We touched them all. Women's gym had a good showing against Florida and then dropped one to Michigan. But
I didn't know that was possible.
Yeah, feel like they'll be, if anything, that just levels up KJ Kindler and what she does with that program. So I assume it's one of those situations, we hear this a lot from Patty Gasso, where she's like, you don't want to lose, but losses aren't the end of the world. And I would imagine that Coach Kindler will have that program firing here as they get closer and closer and closer to postseason.
I'm starting a website, hoopsfrommccaslin.com. Hashtag hoops from
You go to McCaslin, you almost have to find a way to get Grant McCaslin.
Josh, you sure don't. You sure don't. Do not put that out there. As someone who
isn't it like shorter though, if you like it's about like 10 feet shorter, like it's 84 instead of 94 feet. It might make him play a little faster.
Nope, it won't.
Grant McCaslin. You don't want McCaslin in it.
Yeah. Please don't put that in the ether. Please, Texas Tech, please hire that man.
Thank God it's over. It was a rough season. We're glad. We are happy to turn the page. Do not accept any invites to the CBI. Don't do it.
No.
Don't do it.
I think Josh is just happy he no longer has to deal with my overly chipper personality every time I step foot in the Lloyd Noble Center, because I was a joy to be around going into those late-stage Big 12 games.
For those curious, the CBI, 16 teams, the entire thing is played in Daytona, Florida. So there will not be more games in the Lloyd Noble Center this year, thankfully.
I've had my fill of Florida for 2023.
Yeah, I too am good. I too am good.
We're done. All right, that's it for us. Thank you guys so much for listening. Appreciate Hoover and Ryan accommodating me, moving the show over a day. We'll be back next Wednesday at normal time. Our final pre-spring football show. Less than 2 weeks till spring camp starts, if you can believe that. So we'll be talking spring football, of course, coming up. All the latest from football, and then what does women's hoops do, Diamond Sports, all that good stuff next week, right back here on iTunes, Spotify, Google, iHeart, wherever you get your podcasts. If you have an Amazon-able device, just say, Alexa, play the AllSooners podcast. It's also posted on our website, allsooners.com. Click on the playlist on your phone, your tablet, or your computer. You can watch all the shows as well on Who's YouTube page, John Hoover Media. That's it. For Ryan Chapman and John Hoover, I'm Josh Callaway. We'll catch you guys next time.